Alright, howdy folks, Farmer Devin here. I wanted to talk biochar with you a little bit. Just kind of show off a little bit of our super fancy, super technical biochar kiln and the tools that we use to accomplish making the biochar. What is biochar? Biochar is basically just charcoal. The bio comes from the biology that lives within it. There is a lot of surface area on charcoal, and it allows, it's basically when you sink concrete and other things into the ocean to create artificial coral reefs, that's what you're doing with biochar when you put it in the soil. You're creating surface area for life to grow on. And in our case, we also like these big chunks of charcoal because they hold a lot of moisture into the soil and allow biology to survive during some of our dry periods. So you can see that my hands are dirty. For those of you that are into biochar, that's an indication of not a very clean biochar because there's still some oils left in it. Basically, I don't care. I mean, there's ideal biochar, and one can make that, but this is quick and dirty and simple. So this is making biochar with the pit method or cone pit method. Basically, I have a trench here that is sloped on both sides and about 4 feet deep or so. There's about a half batch made here the last time I burned. You can see that there's chunks of metal and hinges and stuff on some of our feedstock material. Iron doesn't really bother me, it's not really a pollutant. That'll just be removed. So a lot of these big chunks will actually go back into the burn pile for later. This, by the way, is way too close for a biochar pit, but it's where it got dumped, and we're working with it. So anyway, apologies for the wind if you can't hear me. All these chunks will get thrown in there. This stick here, because it's charred all the way around, it's actually probably going to go into that pile on the other side of the rocks, and all of those will either be used for debris fencing to make a debris fence that is a little more fire resistant, or they'll be put in the bottom of trenches when we get our tree lines put in the coming years. And then as far as tools that we use, it's really pretty simple. I use a little Bic pocket lighter, you know, cigarette lighter, and that's what I use to start the fire. We use a shovel to break all the sticks up as they're burning. To basically, what that does is it breaks the charcoal down and allows it to settle in the bottom, which reduces how much oxygen can get to those coals and stops it from turning to ash so that we maintain the coal. And that's what you're doing here. You're basically adding material, breaking it up, adding material, breaking it up, and when the pit is full or I'm done for the night, you know, I'm out of time or whatever, then we douse it. And I used to do that with buckets. Now what I do is I have this 350-gallon tank here with a wide valve and a little piece of PVC that's just long enough to reach from that valve to the other side of those rocks. And when I'm ready to douse it, I stuff that PVC onto there, tighten the rubber clamp around it real quick, and then I open that valve. That allows that water to come into here, and while I'm at it, I'll have a hose over here and I'm spraying down whatever that doesn't reach. And by the time that fills the hole, you know, you've got a pretty well doused biochar pit. And that's really all there is to it. What we use this for primarily is we have a compost collection service. There's a little bit of biochar that we put at the bottom of our bucket so that as people fill that with their food scraps and it comes back into our compost system, the biochar has already been soaked with nutrient-rich fluids and some bacteria and fungi, primarily anaerobic at that point, but then it's, you know, sits into our compost piles in the back there, and it becomes part of the compost system. So that's kind of how we use it for the most part. There is a little bit, you might have seen in previous videos, we put some down in our seed mix ahead of the ducks when we move them, and then there's a little bit that I put down at the very last day when I'm not feeding the ducks, just to absorb any duck manure. And sometimes I find that the ducks actually eat a lot of this biochar, so it gives them something to fill the bellies without actually making them too full. Anyway, that's mostly all there is to it. You know, the reason we're located right here is before we had moved onto this property, well, while we were moving, I caught a tree company doing some work down the road, and I just offered a free place for them to dump. So this is what I have left of that material. That'll be probably 2 runs, maybe 1 of biochar, and then that'll all be used up. but it used to be windrows all the way up. There was 2.5 basically, and we use most of that now, so we'll continue to use that and then burn up all of this stuff that's not usable and get it out of here so we don't have a fire hazard. I also use this pit for a burn pit, just miscellaneous burning, and that all gets burned to ash instead of being used for biochar. But that's about all I really want to talk about with fire pit. Anyway, sayonara.